What's up, Philip? This is Matt Rago with Percussion IQ. I'll be doing your verbal commentary today on your performance. Thanks for your submission. What we're going to first do is review your report. I'll help walk through it for a few minutes, and then we will start breaking down your video, giving some feedback. You had a panel of instructors that review your video, including myself from RCC Fall, RCC Winter, John McLean, who's an Arizona clinician, former Blue Devil snare drummer, Jesus Sanchez, former Vanguard snare drummer, current caption of Vanguard cadets, and Adam Wilson, RCC Fall snare tech. We got a cover page. The second page is basically your scores. If you were to do multiple submissions, we can see how you improve within that period. We then go down. This is your actual scores for each assessment. It's out of 10 points. The piece was out of 50. And these comments are the things that were holding us up. These are the things that the biggest things that didn't give us that perfect 10, right? This is the low-hanging fruit from a first read of what you're doing. If you're at an audition, this is something a lot of different staff would probably have in common, and the guys collaborated about, and we found these were like the main big three things for each piece. If you go to the right, what we tend to put here is if it was a minor issue, a major issue, a critical issue, that helps you know in our eyes how major it was. So if you have something that's minor, it's probably something that can be fixed in a few weeks to a month. Major is something that might take a few months to get out of your system to get more comfortable on. Something that's critical is going to take a lot of time to fix up. Okay. The issues are then, we'll get there. Basically, this next page is what I would do in your situation. If you know, there's many ways to help when you lose weight on some triple partials between the threes, but what we try to do here is give a suggestion that's going to be your biggest bang for your buck, something that we think is really going to help fix it the first time around. Or is going to help fix it the best. There's many different ways to fix something. You're clearly a very competent, strong player, and these are things that we think is going to get you into the next level as a player. Remember those issues that we were talking about up here, major, minor, and then what type of issue it was? Was it a tempo issue, a rhythm, a sound technique, or some vocabulary issues? That's where it gets charted out right here. So clearly, we think a majority of your issues are sound. Okay, so what this is what's called a Pareto chart. And what this says is 20% of anything accounts for 80% of the effect. In this case, we had 5 categories: sound, tempo, rhythm, technique. We found that sound accounted for about 50% of your issues, right? So that's where this is right here. Boom, a little above 50. And then we have tempo, takes us about 70. So between tempo and sound, those are the things that would tend to be holding you back. You had some minor rhythmic things, some minor technique things, but we need to focus on your sound and tempo. So that's where a lot of our discussions are going to be when we break down your piece and the assessments. The last part of the report is a comparison report. Essentially, the white boxes are perfect scores. The yellow is the gold standard. For this period, it was Zachary, a Pulse Blue Coat guy. You could see his scores as someone like yourself that took the test. You could see how he played on everything. And then how did you compare? So there's some things that we thought were very comparable. But then there's other things that we thought he played a little stronger, right? And so there's definitely, it's good. I wish when I was your age, I think you're probably 18 or 19, 20, you get a gauge of how you compete against some other really strong players, where you might have some shortcomings, because that helps you give you a reflection of gaps and things you need to do to fix to get stronger, and hopefully it's inspiration and a challenge as well. Cool, man? All right, let's dive right into it. Number 1. Yeah, really good job moving through the modulation, being comfortable. Your taps are a tiny bit stiff. I felt like there's an opportunity to be a little bit more comfortable with the rebound off the head, but it wasn't even noted on your report. That's just an observation for myself. Okay, so that's the first one. So the goal of this report and breakdown isn't to try to be a tick sheet. I'm not just here to tell you what you played good, what you played bad. We're really here to try to find what are consistent patterns of poor performance that we can improve on. What are our deficiencies? What is humbling us? What do we need to really set some time aside on? That's your first comment about losing the weight on the triplet partials. So we started off, and yeah, you might have been a little strict in your motion on some of those taps, but you had a nice beefy sound. As soon as we went to the this guy, there we go, and let's do this. Right, your weight changed, so that tells me that something happens between when we go from like a triplet partial to single stroke partials. I think you play a lot of this exercise really well, but I'm going to stop you right here. I think this was your kryptonite, right? What we call the crux, meaning this whole exercise for you, the biggest challenge was this bar. We tend to hide some height issues. We lost our tap height because we started introducing the triple stroke. Our touch changed in these taps between the triplets. These notes didn't match the way we were playing them back here. I know they're a little bit faster, but it definitely didn't have the same beefy of, like, if I were to close my eyes, it even tap sound when you got there. Cool. We'll talk about the alternate sextuplets and rhythms. Cool. Here we go. Yeah, something that Cheese, I'll call him Cheese, Jesus Sanchez, Captain of Vanguard Cadets, was pointing out with just your hand balance on those. I see it later on in your other pieces as well. A lot of times your left taps are beefier than rights when we get to more condensed versions and complicated passages. So just in general, I lose your tap balance when we get to these phrases. That was a comment from myself and Cheese. I thought you did a really good job of moving through the paradiddles and the threes, maintaining the sextuplet partials. Your mathematical accuracy of all these rhythms was really well done. Okay, the worst rhythms that I caught that we lost the 12-lit was in this bar, as we know is the crux, the hardest part for you, that we had saw the issues, and then we lost the hand balance here, which it started here and then it just carried over when we get to the hard movement. I thought these two bars were good, and I thought the first couple bars were good. Just make sure you're just efficient in your tap balance on the first couple bars, that you're not forcing anything with too much arm. Okay, let's watch it again, see if you can see what I'm talking about. It was more on the faster eighth notes. I agree. The 152, you're doing these dialed eighths. There's going to be a little bit of natural arm motion they have there. No issue there. It's just when you start getting into these eighth notes, it felt like you choke off the sound a little bit, and there's opportunity to let the stick breathe a little bit more in the hand to fulfill a nice, strong sound. Very minor, though. Okay, let's talk about it. This is where we talked about the triplet tap balance right here. How are you playing with the right weight in the hand? And that's also where we started having some openness in our rhythms. That was our only rhythmist comment, was this guy wanting to be a little too fat. I'd also suggest on a bar like this, just make sure your brain is equipped to what your hands are doing, meaning count it a bunch of times. Let's get geeky and go 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, and count over it to teach our brain that we're not going to let ourselves stutter as we change our sticking. Let's move on. A little choked on the threes. Okay, here we go. Let's jump into the comments, and then you can see what I'm talking about. Morphine in our first pattern and a triple roll. That was both a comment once again from Cheese and myself. I think the hardest pattern, and you did a great job fighting through this stuff. Hopefully you enjoy this music that we put together. This modulation got us a little bit. Okay, I'm going. Cheese notated there was a definite balance change when we got to this triple roll, where we lost that nice tap balance in there. Okay, without further ado, let's watch it and then talk about some of the other comments. So let's talk about some good things too. I thought your last pattern was solid. A lot of people struggled slurring out this diddle and their tap height change. You didn't have that issue. Good for you. Let's talk about our left chichettas. You don't like these flams right here. This is just a comment from me and John McLean. Low right flams off the left-hand accents. Right? That space, we struggle with it. We got to see if that carries over on our Tichetta Rule 16. I have a feeling it does. I don't just have a feeling. I know it did. I remember when I was watching this. I saw these issues showing up on that one, and I was like, I can't wait to see his Rule 16 if we see something very similar with some poor flam quality off of that. Okay, a lot of people won't get in on that, but I think your flam control tells a story about you as a player, right? If you could keep consistent flams regardless of you're doing traditional sticking, right, like flam accents, inverted sticking, like inverts, or like deadwood sticking, like the left hand of a patty fla, or in this case, a tachutta. Right, we got to make sure we focus on that space as well, because that shows the maturity and understand your space and time. A couple other things. Tap balance less when isolated diddles added in. Okay, so one thing we did talk about, I want to retract a little bit of my comment. Oh, when we got to this last bar, just the overall weight, we got to ask, did we thin out or because this diddle was in there? A lot of people raise their heights. You actually maybe went a little bit lower when I was really getting picky on it. Last thing, let's watch one more time. I'll get some comments. Yeah, we could definitely get a smoother transition between how you approach this right diddle to this right diddle. Okay, I want you to take a look at that. You might want to do a little bit of primer up on that with some like 16-note diddles into some triplet rolls. I'll probably talk about that here. Yeah, 16-note check with some triplet rolls. Let's talk about this deadwood guy, not maximizing power potential. You're gonna see that comment right here, not maximizing power potential, was said quite a few times in your report, right? Not maximizing height differentials. Missing full range of sound, not maximizing power potential on inverts. And what we're getting at, and that was a comment from Adam, John, and myself. All three of us had that comment. And the way we do that is we all will review, write down our feedback, and then we'll email it out without reading the others. And then we're able to compile it together and then see what the similarities are. And we all had that same comment, and it really showed up in your piece. So I don't want to be in the weeds too much on the exercises, because I do want to break into the way you played the piece a little bit. But in general, I'd say that your number one thing that you're going to want to work on is you had great heights like on the first couple bars of exercise number 1. As soon as we started adding a little bit more difficulty into it, whether it was the triple strokes into the alternated triplets on exercise number 1 or number 2, when we started adding some tachuttas or some isolated diddles, whenever we started adding complexity, I lost a good height differential. And height differential is even tap staying the same no matter what. If I'm playing tap X or if I'm playing mofos. No matter what the rudiment is, I still have a strong X and my tap stay down. We lose that hand balance, and ultimately your balance within the snare line is going to be affected. To Cheese's point, he was talking to me on the phone about, where he feels like based on the rudiment, you really start beefing up your taps a little bit more than most people would, and therefore you would stick out on the line. And the example in this one was the 16 notes to triplet roll. Cool. The last thing I wanted to talk about was just the overall touch of your triplet roll. We didn't do as much triplet rolls in this period, but just be careful of your touch on these first three, right? Let's see if we could hear it in slow-mo, what I just heard, where there's definitely a little bit extra pinch in these fingers right here when we get to some of these triple rolls, and we're not getting even like nice 2/6 tuplets like you had in exercise number 1. I think you heard that like I did, right? You heard over time your grip start tightening up, and the value got a little bit light, got thinner. We lost a 6 tuplet. Listen to it one more time. Right, so that tells me there's extra grip going on in the hands. You're gonna want to close your eyes and just work on some cold tack 6 tuplets. Make sure they're nice and fat. Cool. Let's move on. We're flying right through exercise number 3. Let's do it. talk about some of the comments. Some of the notable things. Zachary had the same issue. When he took it off the left hand, we tend to crush that space of that hair to. We lost that 3/2. Definitely, it's an uncommon rudiment for sure, and it definitely snuck up on us a little bit when we got to that part. It wasn't as smooth as the other off the right hand. Let's also talk about your height. So when we get to these last 3 bars, I thought this was like great. The way you play tap accent, second partial, good work. And then we started adding the flam. I was like, oh, okay. And okay, this is a right accent here and here. It goes a little bit lower. And then as soon as we started adding the diddles, like, holy smokes, like our height differential changed. That's the power. That's the efficiency that we were talking about earlier, right? So what we wrote down was the left hand, not getting a perfect that was a point from cheese, not maximizing power potential on the inverted accents, right? That's what I was just talking about right now, where when parts got more complex, we lost that good accent to tap ratio of height, and then sound reduced as difficulty in exercise increases. And that was the whole, like, the diddles got lower, everything just kind of got diminuendo-windowed. We lost the power over time. How do we fix some of this stuff? We want to do put some left hand on the drum, right hand on the rim, some 3/2 stuff. You might want to take it slower, do some flam jags into that pattern, make sure your brain understands it. Isolate the kicking action of the inverts. Let's go old school a little bit and really work on your whip of like doing one of these guys. Right? Some old school invert technique. Do that in a mirror. Do it double stopped. Make sure your hands are feeling the same on it, that you're getting a kick as you push your elbow down to pop the stick back up. That was a point Adam Wilson brought up where you felt like you were a little stiff on your whip technique, so you weren't able to crank the stick back up to the maximum height to match the height you would have here. In my eyes, as an elite player, your job is, if grandma's watching you playing in the drumline, she shouldn't be able to tell that a bar like this is way harder than a bar like this. But the way we're playing it right now is we're showing that it's much harder. Our accents are getting way softer, we're getting thinner, sometimes our diddles get a little intricate, and it's like, oh, you can tell because all of a sudden your power got softer. Right? Your goal is whatever rudiment you do to be just as calm and powerful as you are in a flam accent. My rule of thumb is the way you feel in a flam accent is the way you should feel on any rudiment. If you don't feel like that on any rudiment, you haven't done the breakdown of the hand enough to get to be that comfortable on that rudiment. Cool. Let's see one more time. Now you can hear the second rush into that left accent, so it is on the right hand as well. Yeah, we got thinner, we started rushing our release, we lost the pocket, right? More intricate, timing started going out the window. I will commend you. I thought these 2 bars were fantastic. Okay, your goal is not to keep working on things you're great at, it's to work on the things that you're deficient at. And I think you know that as you have submitted this test. It takes a lot of balls to do this. I'm proud of you. I hope you're already enjoying this. We got a few more pieces to go through. Once again, the overpinch in the right hand coming in, a little bit more loud than the coming out of the previous doubles to Cheese's point, similar to exercise number 2. Yeah, I didn't write it in your report, but I'm catching it more now that this is like the 3rd, 4th time around watching you playing, is just be careful that we got to be patient to finish these phrases a little bit. Like going from this count 4, going into these flam 5s, you just want to cut it off a little bit. You like to be on the top side of the beat. I noticed it a big time in your piece, but one of the things we like to see is correlations between things seen in the exercises that show up in the piece. And I'm catching that you're clipping and you tend to rush the end of your bars a little bit. It's not in your report, but that's why we got a video commentary for you to hear it from myself, right? Missing full range of sound, the crescendo roll. Okay, that was something from Cheese. Right, let's start low. Let's get all the way up. Let's maximize our shaping. Okay, and you're going to hear that later on as well. touch issues on 16 notes we talked about in that triple roll. 16 notes in a triple roll breakdown. Hey, we had that same comment in exercise number 2. A good primer for you is going to be some 16 notes and triple rolls over and over again. Do your 16 notes as doubles, singles, whatever you want into those triple rolls. And always do the rolls in a dynamic state, meaning you might do a low bar 16 notes and then crescendo the triple roll. High bar 16 notes, then decrescendo it. And let's get a full range of motion always. Right hand rotation is weaker than the left hand. We saw that in our flam jacks from the previous exercise. We see it in this exercise as well. When we get to the flam fives, just our rotation is lacking. Let's check it out. You can see it when we did those flam fives right there. Check out your heights. Let's check it out. So we already had a little bit of a differential of a couple heights just from your right hand wrist rotation. I know I'm getting picky, but it showed up also in your flam jags from the previous bar, showed up in some earlier exercises. So we're definitely into getting a mismatch of power hand to hand, okay? Let's move on. Okay. We're on the 5th guy. Remember what we talked about earlier? We thought maybe what would happen on this pattern was going to show up on the last pattern. Sorry, on the assessment 5. Well, it definitely did. We had a lot of inconsistent flam quality, a little bit uncomfortable on the deadwood. Let's check it out. Yeah, just a tiny bit tighter in that right hand. We're not getting that perfect gosh. What we wrote down. Minor overpinching of right hand diddles. Booyah. That was definitely my comment. Isolate that right hand only. Isn't too tight in that tap position. Similar to comment number 3 from exercise number 2. Okay, not over squeezing. So let's go back to that real fast so we can talk about that. What we're trying to say is when we got to here, this is feedback from me. Make sure we know this is a downstroke. But because we know after the first tap we have another diddle, we got to be careful that we're not over squeezing in this downstroke, that our hand is in too much tension, so then this tap is impacted. You're preparing your hands for this diddle. Good for you. Those diddles were freaking awesome. But what the worst note was this tap right here, right after this accent. I have a feeling if there was no diddles in this bar, you would have been a lot more relaxed on this tap like you were on any other tap in any other part of the exercise. But because we knew we had some arm motion going in on those 16 note diddles, this tap was a little more choked off. Fast forward to exercise number 5. When we started playing over time, the reason we do rule 16, it's a lot easier to do 2 really good tachetas. It's really difficult to do 16 straight, clearly, and you know that as well. And that's the whole purpose of it, is it's not about the first 2 when you do rule 16. It's all about numbers 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, right? That's when the endurance comes in. That's when your hand wants to start changing, and what we're trying to teach our brain is, nope, I am not changing my space on this flam grace note to the diddle. Nope, I am not changing how open my right hand is when I play my deadwood. Okay, that's the whole point of a rule 16. As we went through time, our right diddles just tended to crush a little bit, and we weren't as powerful in our deadwood from our hand. Let's check it out again. Here are we rushing into that right diddle a little bit. That's a common tendency. Think about you're teaching a high school kid to play accent tap, and they're going right hand, right? And then they start adding the accent, so they're going da 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 da. But they're too tight in their grip. What happens to that first tap after the accent? It's probably gonna be early. Da 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 da. And just comes in a tiny bit on the top side. That's what's going on right here when we're going into these right diddles. Okay, we know we have this tap coming in right after this left accent. We're getting a little excited for it. We're in a tighter grip on this partial, causing us to be slightly early, slightly tight. Let's check it out. right? And we weren't matching the power of those taps. We've talked about some tap balance and flam consistency issues. Both of those are going to be fixed by deadwood hand breakdown. So the deadwood is exactly what you're doing in the Tachetta from the lead hand. You're basically doing a really fast accent tap, but it's so quick you can't have two perfect heights, but you're not going to play it like a flam tap either, right? You're going to close the hand a little bit more as you drop that accent down. It's kind of like a bad diddle technique where we're going to force the taps to be lower, but they're still going to be in tempo, right? Your goal is to still, when you do a deadwood, give as much power as you can to keep the taps consistent afterwards. Deadwood is definitely more of an advanced technique that is in your realm of the world. I think there's a lot more opportunity in the invert stroke and the deadwood stroke for you to get more comfortable into those height paradigms to match how powerful you played when you were doing something like something like this. I always like to go back to this. You were so comfortable and it was so good when you played exercise number 3 right here. This was so comfy. Right, we need to go back to how comfy you were on that when you do invert and deadwood. Hopefully this is helpful so far. Let's get to the piece. Let's dive into my comments first with the team. Open space. So everyone had this big issue, including Zachary, of just struggling through the comfortability of the 4/3. The whole intention of the first couple bars was that 4/3 feel of da 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 da. Pass the bread and butter. Pass the bread and butter. Ba ba da ba da 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 da. But then throwing paradiddles inside of it, so then it displaces where you're at in that phrase of pass the bread and butter, right? And so what happens is when we have these paradiddles that are so quick inside the piece, right? There's so much stuff here, and it's high density. It's tough in our brain to then open up that space. Pass the bread and butter. Pass the bread, and press the bread and right? Feeling, come in and out of that in that space. And so that was the dichotomy that I'm trying to look at. Is like we have this yin, and this is then the yang, and then we have the yin again, and then we have the yang, and then the yin, right? That's the yin. That's the yang. That's the yin, yang. If I were you, man, go back and play these first 3 bars a bunch of times. Get really comfy, just going da 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 by itself. Your paradiddles were great, just like in exercise number 1. This dotted eighth note space, this tells a maturity. This tells a story about your mathematical brain on being able to put the brakes on. Okay, and this is where we really struggled. This caused some concern in my eyes, and that was one of the first things I really wanted to hit with you on this. Cool. We know this comment. You watch your piece. Watch me play it right now. When we get to the harder stuff, we lost the power in the accents. More difficult shift changes impacted rhythmic accuracy. I'll talk about that when we watch it. Here we go. Hear that rushing into that paradiddle right here? Right, you gotta ask yourself, I'll give you a second. What partial is this 6-doublet start on? Right, the and a 3. When you played it, we want to push into that guy a little bit, just like we want to rush into our dotted eighth, which this guy's supposed to come in on the of 3 to release on the of 4. I also want to rush a little. Good work. Good work through that whole bookends. Very good. That's where I first saw weakness in this comment, maximizing the height differential. We had that similar issue with some tap height in exercise number 2. That's what showed up here. I really work on doing this bar. There's definitely, sorry, not this bar, but work on these bars, right? It's basically the same 7 3/4 counts twice, right? It starts the second time off, on the of 4. Okay, and so you did a really good job with your foot timing. It was comfy, but we lost that nice tap balance that you had here. You had some baller taps on these bars right here through the beef. I'm proud of you on that. We need to make sure it relays back into this phrase right there. Okay. Yeah, and so then we had the shift at the end. That's what I wanted to talk about a little bit. And this caught a lot of people as well. There's this gnarly shift. It's a little, when I write these pieces, there's traps everywhere, right? You did a good job fighting through this, but your 9lets are money. I really like your 9lets. You did a good job on this roll. There's opportunity, of course, to still be a little beefier on some of these things like Zachary was in his videos, right? And still keep that same quality. So keep working on that big height differential. But then where I caught you a little bit was right here. These 2.8s, you flowed the hands, that was great. But then knowing that there's a quick flam 5, it's not as quick as you think. So then what do you think I'm going to say about the interpretation of that diddle? Tight. Right? Right here, we get to the hands, we're floating for the hand-to-hand flam. We get to here, we want to overgrip our diddle. Where else have we overgripped our diddles? Hey, maybe the rule 16, the Tachetta, or earlier on when we were doing some, right hand triplets on exercise 1, right? We have a tendency to want to overgrip our right hand. Okay, that's a common theme that we found through your assessment. That's something you're going to want to look at. Cool. I appreciate you doing 2 reps. I thought your second rep was much stronger. Clearly, you're a smart player and you made a lot of corrections to the first rep. But I think the themes that we still called out are things that are consistent issues and are aligned with what we found earlier. So let's do a quick review. A lot of good stuff in there, Phil. Your overall score, you're right on that brink of that 90. I think there was an opportunity to play much stronger in the piece, but I think a lot of these little indiscretions that we had in exercises 1 through 5 showed up in the piece a little bit, and ultimately there's a lot of room for improvement on a few things, okay? I think number 1, we need to maximize our power potential on deadwood, inverted strokes, make sure there's a good differential of heights as we discussed. 2 is your right hand. Make sure we're not over gripping. We need a better wrist rotation to the accent to match your left hand, and when it's on a low end and it's going out of a high quick rudiment or a weird shift change like into the flam 5s, you gotta be careful. You like to over squeeze your right hand. Cool. Last one is the weight balance of the taps, right? We saw it in exercise number 1. We just did the triplets, the triple strokes into the alternated strokes. And then we saw it in the piece when we got to that gnarly, right? And we got to that bar where it gets offset by 1 partial. We lost the tap balance. Cool, man. A lot of comments in here. I would say listen to this video a few times. There's a lot of things we can work on. Once again, man, I'm a big fan. I can't wait to see where you are at this summer. Watch you perform and get to meet you. I'd love to talk to you in person about some of these things and learn from you. I'll be probably at the Texas Regional and DCF Finals. So if we get a chance, let's introduce ourselves, and love to hear how your journey's going and where you think you've improved and what you thought of this assessment. Anyways, man, best of luck. Can't wait to see your progress. Remember, stay humble, stay hungry. Peace out.